So welcome to Deep Dive, everyone. Hosted by First Things First Okanagan. I'd like to start by acknowledging that we are grateful to live on the traditional land of the Syilx Okanagan people. We live in a beautiful and very unique region in Canada, and it's our responsibility to help protect this valley through our efforts. And that's part of what First Things First is all about. Our mission is to promote awareness of climate change and to work to find solutions for a better future. We developed the idea for these deep dive discussions since we can't meet in person. Usually our organization is active giving talks and seminars and big symposia and different public events. And we're not able to do that. So maybe it's a time to deep dive into issues, do a bit of reading, watch a few videos and talk about it together. So the theme of this month's deep dive is transportation, and transportation is the biggest contributor to emissions in the valley and in most towns. Here it's 67%. So the idea of tonight is to hear from each other and hear from also some people working on these issues, to learn about ways that we can support the transition to lowering emissions for transportation in our valley. We've got a lot to cover this evening, so I'm going to ask you to use the chat box to jot down questions or comments if you're listening to the speakers, and or save those questions for the end. I'll be monitoring the chat box and jotting down questions myself. The session is being recorded, but that's only for our own note taking because we sort of summarize the discussion each time we do this and put it on the website. So I want to introduce, before we start, Lori Goldman there. She's in my upper left. She's our tech person, our Zoom tech. She's going to be taking us to our Zoom rooms later on today. Sue Kirschman is the brainchild behind this series. And I'm going to be turning things over to her to introduce our guest tonight. Go ahead, Sue.
Better unmute myself first. Hi, everybody. Thanks for joining us tonight. So we'll be covering 3 separate topics about transportation and about lowering emissions. About 20 minutes per topic. Margaret will be kind of keeping track of the time, keep us on track. The first one will be about public transit. Can it be successful in a mostly rural area? And what are some of the ways that transit can reduce its carbon emissions? The next will be talking about electric vehicles and what are the barriers to people buying them and using them locally. And the last topic will be other non-carbon and low-carbon transportation options, such as bikes, e-bikes, car sharing, and other ideas. So we have 3 guest speakers who very kindly agreed to join us this evening to talk about the first topic, the public transit topic. And Joanne Kleb is from the City of Penticton. Just give a wave, Joanne, so people know who you are. Thanks. And Chelsea Mossy is from BC Transit. And Jim Beattie from Naramata. So as Margaret mentioned, if you come up with any questions during the presentations, you can just put them into the chat, and then we'll try to have a little question session afterwards. So to start with, I'll introduce Joanne. Joanne Kleb is the Public Engagement Officer for the City of Penticton, and she will summarize the process that the city's been going through to create its transportation master plan. And she'll also tell us what the next steps in the process will be. So welcome, Joanne. Just please go ahead and unmute yourself, and I'll turn it over to you.
Great, thanks so much, Sue. Hello, everyone. That's a pretty esteemed panel. I'm pretty sure there's quite a few of you would be able to share quite a bit about what I'm going to say tonight. So please do jump in as we go. I'm wondering if I can share my screen, Sue. Did you give me hosting abilities, or I will try and see what happens.
Yes.
Looks like it's working. Let's just see if it'll let me do, there we go, perfect. Well, we'll see how things go. I am well aware of this group, but haven't really been involved with them directly to date. So I was really excited about the invitation, especially in light of everything that's going on in the city right now. I think the timing was really excellent. And I'm just gonna start by saying, I'm not the climate change expert at the city, and nor am I the transportation expert at the city. But what I do do well is connect with the right people. So I was really keen to come participate and hear what you have to say and see how it fits with the work that we're doing at the city. And Sue was great about giving me the heads up that you guys are really good at doing your homework. So I'm not going to go through some of the materials in too much detail, but I will just kind of bring you up to speed on where we're at in terms of the transportation master plan. And many of you I know were involved in the creation of our official community plan, which has been our guiding document. That document includes a section with policies on transportation and infrastructure. And within that section, one of the directives of that section is to develop an integrated infrastructure master plan. And it includes a bunch of different elements of infrastructure, including transportation being one of them. And so like I said, I probably don't have to tell this group what a transportation master plan is, but it really looks at the different ways that citizens get around and how well are we doing and are we living up to the direction that has been set in our official community plan. I think what's really exciting and possibly one of the biggest, most dramatic changes for the city in the official community plan, the entire document, is the transportation vision and direction, and that is the shift to a complete transportation approach. And again, I know this group is probably pretty familiar with this. Penticton sadly isn't blazing any trails when it comes to the complete transportation approach. Many cities have already endorsed this approach, but it's really about making more active forms of transportation a priority and prioritizing investment in those forms of transportation. So it's really, anyone who knows Penticton knows that we're really kind of upside down from from where this triangle is right now. But there's definitely recognition and a desire in the official community plan to shift that emphasis to more active forms of transportation. And like I said, big change for Penticton, right? So from our census profile, the current state, 83% is really kind of that single occupant vehicle focus. If you follow the social media threads, you'll see that is quite prevalent. And so this move to the complete transportation approach is a big change. And as you know, for many of us, the official community plan, the completion was a huge achievement. But that's just the start of the journey as we're seeing. And so there's definitely a lot more work to be done, lots more awareness, education, and ambassadorship that needs to be done if we're going to make any kind of progress towards this change. And I think that's what's so exciting about First Things First Okanagan, is how many leaders are within this organization who are willing to be vocal and support the community in making this change. And so this is where I'm not going to spend a lot of time. So within the official community plan, there are policy areas for each of those forms of transportation. There's direction provided around walking, direction provided around cycling, direction provided around transit, direction provided around goods movement, even direction provided around driving. And so as we know, if we're successful with our official community plan, and this is a long-term document, we'll start to see some reassignment of our transportation corridors with more balance of the multimodal forms of transportation. We'll see Penticton go on a bit of a road diet and less on-street parking with options for, again, different forms of active transportation. We'll see more multi-use pathways, and we'll see promotion of more walking, cycling, and transit in our community. And so the transportation master plan, because it was such a huge undertaking to do the official community plan, quite often when you do a transportation master plan, the front end is all on that strategic direction. And because we did quite a bit of that work through the official community plan, the focus with the transportation master plan was really on doing more of an audit between what we have today and that vision that's set in the official community plan. So we didn't do a lot of front end work to try to reinvent the wheel, so to speak. We were really gathering input from people on just how well we're doing against the direction in the official community plan. And so, like I said, the foundation was set by the official community plan. Even though it was a big, robust process, there's, geez, I can't remember, there's just a gazillion policies in there. So we were planning for fairly low awareness of this transportation vision. And again, Penticton's a busy city, so there's lots of integrated and overlapping projects. And we also have the COVID restrictions to deal with in terms of figuring out how we're going to involve the community in the transportation master plan. And so our approach was really to, again, focus on that vision, which you saw with the video that we prepared, involve the community in identifying the needs. We are just about getting ready to consult with some of the key stakeholder groups listed here. And we're going to be seeking opportunities to integrate with other projects and groups. So groups like this is a great opportunity for us to kind of vet the direction that the plan will be heading. So like I said, to date, what have we done? A lot of awareness raising and that input into how well we're doing, where the needs are. So coming up next in terms of the transportation master plan, it's really about confirming the findings. And so this is all, it was due to come out this December. And this is a challenge that I have because guess what? Engagement in December is not ideal, but also, guess what? Engineers don't care. So I have to figure out how am I going to get the findings together, put them in a meaningful format, and find a way to vet them with the broader community. And so all of those plans are really going to be developed over the next week. And so you should be watching Shape Your City and local media for information, and I'll make a point of sending it specifically to some of my key contacts with this group so that you know how to be involved. And again, what we're going to be coming out with are the findings from our process to date, which includes a lot of traffic counts, as well as the input that we received from the community. Where are the dangerous areas? Where are the gaps in connectedness? And where are the opportunities? And so, just like I said, our goal had been the September-October timeframe, but COVID is really throwing a wrench in a lot of our plans. And so we're now kind of revisiting what that timeline looks like. And so that's kind of what I had to share. And so, like I said, I'm looking forward to hearing from the other panelists and also from this group on what some of your suggestions are with some of your topics today. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Joanne. That was very interesting. One thing that might be to your advantage is I don't think anyone's traveling in December, so December might work.
That's true.
So if anyone has questions for Joanne, if you could just save them or put them in the chat, and we'll be discussing them after the third speaker. So next, I'm pleased to introduce Chelsea Mossy, who's joining us tonight from Victoria. Chelsea is the Senior Manager of Government Relations for BC Transit, and we'll be talking about BC Transit's future plans for BC with a focus on our area. Chelsea, I think, has a slide presentation that she'll be sharing with us tonight. So please go ahead, Chelsea.
Okay. Hello, everyone. I'm just going to go ahead and share my screen here. Can you all see that? Nods work. Perfect. All right. So as I've said, my name is Chelsea Mossy, Senior Manager of Government Relations with BC Transit. this is definitely one of those presentations that I would have loved to been able to do in person if it weren't for this pandemic. It's just really great to have the opportunity to meet and speak with other people who are also passionate about sustainable transportation and transit. So as was said, I'm going to do a bit of an overview of who BC Transit is and what we do, and then I'll get into a bit about your transit system and also our low carbon fleet program, or more simply put, our pathway to electrification. And then I will open it up at the end for some questions. So as Senior Manager of Government Relations, what I do is I work primarily with our local government partners in the Okanagan region, but also with the province. And back at BC Transit, I'm supported by a team of subject matter experts. So that's our planning team, our scheduling, our finance team, and so forth. And important to note for this presentation is that we have also within the last few years developed a low carbon fleet team. So we have a team that's specifically working on lowering our emissions and the fleet requirements for that. So who is BC Transit? We're the provincial authority responsible for planning, funding, and operating transit throughout British Columbia outside of Metro Vancouver, where transit's provided by TransLink. We work in partnership with 58 local government partners. So for the South Okanagan-Similkameen transit system, we work with the City of Penticton, we work with the Regional District of Okanagan-Similkameen, we work with the District of Summerland and the Town of Princeton. We work on the operating company side of things. We work with 18 private management companies, 14 not-for-profit societies, and 4 of our transit systems are operated by the local government themselves. This is just a quick overview of our BC Transit partnership model in case you're not familiar with it. So there's BC Transit in the middle. On one side of things, we work with the province, who ultimately sets their public policy objectives and is responsible for approximately half of the funding of transit systems. And then we work in partnership with our local government partners very closely. Our local governments are responsible for setting the priorities of the transit system, so that's the service levels, the areas served, and the approving the schedules. And our local governments are also responsible for the fare structures for the transit system. And then BC Transit holds the contract with our local operating companies. And in Penticton, that would be Barrie and Smith. So moving over to the planning side of things and your transit system in specific. So while COVID-19 has had significant impacts on ridership across the province, and that's certainly been the case as well in the South Okanagan-Similkameen transit system, we're continuing to work with our local government partners on planning for the future, as we know that transit contributes to healthy and vibrant communities. And even after this pandemic is over, we are still going to have the problems that existed prior to the pandemic, such as climate change, people with the inability to access the services they need. So we really believe strongly that transit will continue to play a strong role. So in 2015, we created the South Okanagan-Similkameen Transit Future Plan, and that plan was intended, or is intended, to guide decision-making for the South Okanagan-Similkameen region for the next 25 years. And we've been working on implementing some of the recommendations within that plan. More recently, working with the City of Penticton and with Joanne, we've been working on a Transit Future Action Plan, which is an update to that 2015 plan. And this Transit Future Action Plan is intended to guide transit decision-making for the next 5 to 7 years in the region. And it will eventually consist of some public engagement where, again, I know we will be working closely with Joanne and her team, as well as with the other local governments involved in the transit system. We currently are looking at expansions for the South Okanagan Similkameen transit systems on routes such as the Route 70, Penticton, Kelowna, an introductory service to West Bench, some expansion on the Route 30, Penticton, Summerland, and also some custom transit expansion in Penticton. All of our expansion planning is done on a 3-year cycle, and it does require as well funding approval from the province, which we learn of annually on budget day. So we require sign off from our local government partners on any expansions. And once we have that, it's my role to take that request to the province for their share of the funding. And we then learn about approvals for that. And so funding is required on both sides of things for expansions. So moving on, oh my goodness. If I can go back here, there we go. So just moving on, okay, it's going to take me to that next slide. So that's okay, it's going. So what we're gonna do is we're just going to view the slides this way, and you'll probably be able to see my notes at the bottom, but that's not a big deal. There we go. Can everyone still see that? Great. Okay, so moving on just a bit about our low carbon fleet program. So in November 2018, BC Transit approved a low carbon fleet program to support provincial targets for greenhouse gas emissions. This plan aligns with the Clean BC plan, and core to this program is a 10-year fleet replacement strategy through which we plan to acquire approximately 138 electric buses between the 21-22 fiscal year and the 24-25 fiscal year, and another 810 between 25-26 and 2030 and 31. So an ultimate goal here is just, as I was explaining expansions, that expansions will, when a transit system gets more service hours and sometimes requires more buses, that expansions will be primarily supported with electric buses. So these are the 4 principles of our low carbon fleet program. I'll just go through each one of them and explain a little bit more what they mean. So of course, each of, or here you'll see 4 different types of buses. So those are our 4 vehicle classifications. So we have our light duties, which you would probably recognize from delivering handy dart service, right up to the bottom right, there is a double decker that's only used in Victoria. So we are planning to transition our vehicles to electric propulsion based on the fleet replacement plan. So basically the plan that needs to happen to replace the fleet as it ages. So this plan is based on the fleet replacement needs in each vehicle classification, and we've established an initial pathway to full electrification. This pathway will allow BC Transit to create targeted timelines for implementation after obtaining implementation and operating experience for each type of bus. So this core to this low carbon fleet program is that it is also supported by the use of CNG buses or low or no emission buses. So currently we have 217 compressed natural gas buses in our fleet. And at this time, only CNG buses are planned to replace and expand the heavy duty and medium duty bus classifications until our transition to electric buses. And then, so while a preliminary pathway to electrification has been established, business cases will continue to be required for determining which investment will best support achieving BC Transit's objectives, as well as the provincial greenhouse gas reduction targets. Okay. Sorry, just lost track of my, here we go. So partnerships are critical to the success of this transition strategy, particularly those with our local government partners. But we will continue to work with bus manufacturers, renewable fuel suppliers, and propulsion suppliers to strengthen this program and ultimately to learn and continue to learn. So our next steps, or our current step to be more accurate, last week we released an RFP to support the first deployment of 10 heavy-duty battery electric buses. The release of this RFP is important towards meeting the requirements of our low carbon fleet program to buy only zero emission buses after 2028 and to have a zero emission fleet by 2040. We anticipate that our annual greenhouse gas emissions will be approximately 67% lower than current annual fleet emissions in 2030. We will also be conducting site assessments around the province with hydro providers, BC Hydro, Fortis, and I believe Penticton has its own hydro, so working with that hydro provider as well to determine the readiness of electricity infrastructure to support electric fleets across the province. And we'll also be doing capital planning. There will be significant capital planning that will be required for electrification, and we'll be working with the ministry to refine the anticipated funding requirements, including the alignment of our low carbon fleet investment with the planned construction of new operation and maintenance facilities. And then just in terms of partnerships, we'll continue to collaborate with our partners on this program and share key lessons learned and gather information from key stakeholders, including other transit agencies, which is something we're doing a lot of right now. We're working closely with TransLink on this current RFP and on our pathway to electrification moving forward. So I know that was a lot of information. I don't know if I'm opening it up for questions now. I'm happy to take questions. It's just however it works best within the agenda.
I think just in a couple minutes, we're just going to hear from Jim, and then we'll, I see there are a number of questions in the chat, and then we'll get to those in just a couple minutes. So if you could unshare your screen, please, Chelsea. Thanks. So I'm going to introduce Jim Beattie, who is the chair of First Things First, Okanagan, and he's offered to share his experience with taking public transit from Naramata and in and around Penticton. So go ahead, Jim.
Thank you, Sue. So my story is a more personal story. I moved to Naramata a few years ago, and my partner and I, Christy, discussed how we could get down to one vehicle. And we don't always go to town at the same time, but our plan was that when we did go to town, or when our car went to town, that two of us would attempt to be in that car. And if I were to go to town by myself, I would take the bus. So I bought myself a bus pass. Interestingly, about the Okanagan, it's very narrow. And as a result of that, it's very easy for one bus route to pick up a lot of people. For example, in Naramata alone, I think the bus passes between 75 to 90% of the population in Naramata. And then on the trip into town, it is virtual reach of almost everyone on Naramata Road. From my house, it's less than 7 minutes to the bus stop, and I'm probably as far as any of that 75 to 95% of the people is from the bus route. So I guess the point is that it's very convenient. And in fact, I would suggest to BC Transit that if they want to really do a program of encouraging more bus use, more public transportation, that focusing on a valley like the Okanagan is the right place to do it. Because with a minimal number of bus routes, you can touch a lot of people. The ride to Penticton is very quick. And there are a number of buses that leave for Penticton and return every day. It doesn't stretch into the evening, but I can leave here in the morning and get to town before 8:30 if I were a working person, which I'm not. And I could come home at two times in the afternoon if my job finished earlier or if a little later. Once you get to Penticton, if you purchase a bus pass, then you can take all of the buses in Penticton, and that's very convenient, except to say that the drivers that drive from Naramata to Penticton are so willing to be cooperate to your needs. You can be dropped off almost anywhere in the main part of Penticton, all the way down to Cherry Lane, and that covers a lot of the business section of town and the social gathering places. As well, when you're in Penticton, you can catch a bus to other destinations. And I have taken the bus to Summerland twice and returned twice. It's not quite as convenient if I'm coming all the way from Naramata, because of course the times of linking up the buses is sometimes a bit of a challenge. As I was saying, the bus drivers are very well acquainted with most of the people that ride the bus. So it's at this point, you can get very personalized service in terms of pickup and drop off. And quite frankly, I think if I was living in Vancouver, I wouldn't find it any more convenient to take the bus than what I find here in Naramata. So I'm a proponent. Right now, my car is still off the road. We have just one car, but according to the necessity of COVID, I'm not taking the bus so often. And at this point, I don't have a bus pass because to ride is only $4. And if I were to go in 2 or 3 times this month, then I wouldn't necessarily want to buy a $40 bus pass. But if you're taking the bus regularly, a $40 bus pass, and for the distances that you can travel, is an exceptionally good deal. So that's my personal story about riding the bus in the Okanagan.
Thanks so much, Jim. It's great to hear a local perspective. Now, I think there are a number of questions in the chat, and I'll turn it over to Margaret. Margaret was going to read some out.
I will. I'll read it out. And I apologize too. I have a cold and I thought I was muted, but wasn't when I blew my nose. So if you heard a loud trumpeting noise in the middle of somebody's presentation, that was me, and I apologize for it. We have some really interesting questions. The first one, a couple of people have asked if BC Transit will considered hydrogen rather than going electric. Is that a possibility for the future, or has it been considered? That's a question for Chelsea.
Yeah. We previously had a fleet of hydrogen buses in Whistler. Those were the buses that served the 2010 Olympic Games. So we do have experience with hydrogen buses, and I want to emphasize that the overall goal of this low carbon fleet program is to lower emissions. So I don't think it's 100% decided that that will fully be through electric buses. That will be supported by our CNG fleet with the goal of reducing emissions. I think we are going to learn a lot from this initial deployment of electric buses, and from there, and once we have those lessons learned, we'll be deciding, our senior leadership team will be deciding how best to move forward with our low carbon fleet program and the correct fleet to support that.
Thanks, Chelsea. And there's another question for you. Last week, we just had a lake-to-lake bicycle route approved by our city, and we're very excited about that.
Mm-hmm.
We've heard that, or one of the people participating tonight has noticed that there's been some resistance from BC Hydro, or BC Transit rather, to in building narrower vehicle lanes in favor of bike lanes. Can you comment on that?
Sure. My comment to that would just be that BC Transit's #1 priority is safety. The lane widths that are in our infrastructure guidelines are what our safety and training team, our senior leadership team, have determined to be safe for both transit passengers and the community. So all I can say is that those lane widths would just be to uphold safety for everyone on the road.
Okay, thanks. A question for Joanne. How can those of us in this evening and other people living in Penticton, how can we best support the master plan as it comes forward? There's the idea in some communities of having local ambassadors that actually kind of reinforce and spread positive messaging about planning.
Yeah, that's a big question, but it's definitely a big opportunity with this group. And like I said, individually, we've already started to see it. Like, I think this group is likely on board with the direction that's set in the OCP, and that now we need you to be agents of change in the community and support awareness activities and culture and behavioral change activities. And that's where I think the greatest opportunity is. I know that with the lake to lake route in particular, that one of the findings from the engagement process is the importance of awareness and education. And so as that project moves forward, we'll be looking at involving more members of the community to be ambassadors, members from PACA, members from this group, to help us design appropriate education and incentive programs to help people take advantage of that asset. And I think that would be a huge improvement for the city to begin with. But yeah, everything that you're doing around education and you know, checking the misinformation that's shared. I, for one, really struggle when there's so much misinformation on the social media threads, and it warms my heart to see people share facts in a way that the city can't. So please, in the meantime, while we're building these bigger plans, continue those types of advocacy efforts, and then there will be more opportunities as we go forward for more organized involvement.
Thanks, Joanne. Chelsea, here we have a private transit provider, and it's my understanding that they would have to bear the cost of electric buses themselves. As citizens, we're given an incentive by the government to buy electric vehicles. Is there any kind of financial incentive for the transit providers in rural areas like ours to help them with the purchase of electric fleet?
Sure. So to clarify, BC Transit owns our fleet, and there would be no additional cost to our operating company. They are strictly, their role is to deliver the transit service. BC Transit owns the fleet, and we would continue to own the fleet, and we lease our buses to our local government partners.
Okay, so buses that we see running in Penticton are BC Transit buses owned by BC Transit.
They are, and they're leased by the local government.
Okay, thanks. Joanne, somebody is asking specifically about the pedestrian crossing over the channel on the old KVR rail bed. This is such an important corridor. Is there any way that there could be discussion with the Penticton Indian Band to connect the college, the Okanagan Center with, and you know, just connect to a hike bike crossing and a safe walking crossing? I think there's always the talk about the bridge between the communities. We do indeed need a safe crossing between the two communities. Did that come up as part of the plan?
Well, what I can tell you is I'm not aware of any plans for that old KVR bridge. I do know that there is a vision for a spur to go across at Green Lake Road across the Channel Parkway there. So I think that's directionally where that's headed, but that's certainly feedback that I can take back to the team. I'm not sure if any of the other attendees today have any more to offer on that.
Well, we could take comment and deliver it to you, that's for sure. And there'll be another opportunity, I think, when you have your draft plan coming in December, January.
Yep.
So thanks.
I might have said Green Lake Road. I meant Green Mountain.
Okay, thanks. Thanks very much, Chelsea and Joanne. We're going to move on to other topics. We might be talking about, transit and transportation plan later, but for now, if you have other things to dash away to, we won't be terribly disappointed. We know we can give you input, but if you'd like to go and do other things, that's fine. We're going to move on to our next topic now. So I'm going to turn things over to Sue.
Okay, so the next topic we're going to talk about tonight is electric vehicles. Of course, another way that we can lower our carbon emissions, as well as the public transit option. The provincial government is trying to encourage this through Clean BC, their Clean BC plan, which has a mandate to phase out the sale of fossil fuel vehicles by 2040. And you might be familiar with the transition rate that they're following. They have a Zero Emissions Vehicle Act in place, which will require automakers to achieve 10% provincial zero emission vehicle sales by 2025, 30% by 2030, and 100% by 2040. And these are for light duty vehicles, those figures. The government has also created an incentive program to encourage people to buy EVs. And what we'd like to explore tonight is first look at what the barriers are in our area to people purchasing and using EVs. And then later to talk about how we can maybe overcome or help overcome these barriers. So we're going to go into small groups using breakout rooms. Lori is going to randomly put people into rooms with 3 or 4 other people. And you'll have 4 minutes to discuss this topic among yourselves. So again, the question is, what are the barriers to people purchasing and using EVs locally? And then we will come back and have another little discussion after that. So are you ready to send us off, Lori?
I think so. Have you been invited to join a room?
No.
Uh-oh. I thought that it was already set up. I think we have a problem, guys. Okay. I'm sorry, I thought it was already set up, ready to go.
That's okay. Maybe we'll just have the discussion all together. What we're hoping to do is identify all the different barriers that we know from our own experience and our neighbors, why there isn't bigger uptake of electric vehicles. Some may be seen as excuses, some may be valid, some may be changing. Maybe right, oh, maybe, oh.
Now we have breakout room.
Oh, okay, very good.
Should we go for it?
Yeah, I'm assigning people like crazy. I'm doing
Okay.
All right.
10 people away.
See you soon in the Zoom room.
Yes, people are moving. Oh, sorry about this, guys. I thought it was all set up.
Group's getting smaller.
Goodbye.
Yeah.
Margaret, have you been moved? Hello.
Hello, everybody. Looks like everybody is back, I think. So
Can you
Lori's
see
put,
the poll?
so Lori's got a poll set up, and if everyone could just pick the one that they think is the main barrier. I mean, yes, there are a number, but which do you think is the most important for our area? Just
I
so we
can
get a
only
sense.
tick one. That's disappointing.
Sorry,
Why can I only tick one? That's disappointing.
that's just the way it was set up for this, just to get
I
an
know.
idea.
I know.
I think.
Look at all these smiling faces. They all own e-bikes and EVs. I can see it.
So Lori, will it pop up with the results? I'm not sure how it works.
I think I will be able to try to share the results. I think we've got everybody in here. I'm going to end the poll. And let's see. Can you see the results?
Yes.
So there you go, cost.
Range anxiety is very close though.
Yeah.
I would argue there's a dependency between range anxiety and amount of charging stations.
Yeah, I would agree.
Yeah, they both.
I was the person that put in other, and I guess I was kind of confused by one of the questions which talked about vehicle disposal. My anxiety is around me selling my gas car to somebody else and then me buying an electric.
Yeah.
I
It
guess you
seems like-
better do that quickly.
Pardon me?
You better do that within the next few years. Although,
Yeah, I guess right now, if I wanted to buy an electric car, what would happen to my gas car? Doesn't seem to be much point of selling it to somebody else.
You could donate it to charity, Jim.
It's still going to be on the road. That's the point.
Do dealerships that sell electric cars, do they take the fuel powered cars and do any kind of recycling of them instead?
Well, I'm sure they do. I mean, they sell both types, gasoline and EV. So you can trade in a car like you normally would, but they might not give you the amount of money you wish. I mean, I don't know. I think that's a good point, though.
But the point is, would they recycle it rather than reselling it so that it's still on the road?
I don't think so. They'd resell it.
Only if you were to buy in or the government program became applicable to your purchase of the electric car. And not very many of them are. Like when the government buys the car, they take it off the road and then it's destroyed or recycled. Anyways, that's my concern.
That's a,
There is a situation where, anytime you get a new car, there's always the carbon cost of producing the vehicle. So keeping something running instead of buying an entirely new one actually has some benefit. It will die at some point anyway.
No, that's definitely a good point.
I guess that's a bit like sorry.
Go ahead, Sue.
I was going to say a bit like replacing the buses with electric buses when their time is done. So, yeah, sorry, Jim, go ahead.
No, it's fine.
looking at cost as the main barrier that most people identified, from our readings, hopefully we've learned that the cost amortized over the time you own the car is actually a little bit cheaper for electric vehicles. And I think that's something we need to communicate through our own work. And we were actually, first things first, was going to have our second electric vehicle kind of expo along with other home energy features. And we still plan to do this in the future, hopefully in 2021 in the fall. But people just need to be exposed to electric vehicles. And what we found was very effective is just to expose people to the owners of electric cars. They are the best salespeople in terms of how pleased they are with their use and ease of use and saving money.
And
Just
that's
coming back to the cost, Margaret, you know, it's great that it does cost a lot less once you've got an electric vehicle to maintain them, and the cost is amortized, but you still have to have the money up front to buy it. And you know, there's always going to be people in the foreseeable future anyway, in our society who need a car but cannot afford an electric car. So, you know, I think some of those.
I'm guessing though, if you financed your electric vehicle and just put down on it what you would have spent for a gas car, then put the money you save on gas into an envelope, you could pay off your loan in short order.
If you're willing to borrow money, and I'm not, so.
Well, you can usually
Not at
get
this point in my life.
3 years of finance-free payments on your car.
And I was noticing in one of the videos that we were watching, or maybe it was the discussion on a webinar, that over time we're going to see that the costs of these vehicles will come down. Ford is doing a plant in Oshawa for just electric vehicles. And so over time, we're going to see the prices come down. We've already seen them come down in the past 10 years. Mm-hmm. And surely they're going to come down more and be more reasonable for people. And then if we have more shared vehicles too, that will help, because if people can share a vehicle, they can buy an EV together and really share them.
Yeah, sure.
Is there anyone that hasn't spoken yet? There's been a few voices, including my own, that I pitched in a few times, but is there anyone that's been holding back that would like to? Kent, go ahead, please.
I just wanted to point out that, and as opposed to trying to get rid of our personal car, what we would probably want, what I would propose would be emission standards, so that it may not be my particular vehicle that gets taken off the road, but it's the one with the least efficiency or the most polluting cars get taken off the road first. So even if I buy an electric car, somebody buys my car, if it's less polluting than another car down the line, that we should be trying to get rid of the cars down the end of the line as opposed to just a car that I particularly have.
Interesting idea.
Yeah. Anyone else like to make a comment that has?
Well, I like Kent's comment a lot. That reminds me of my home country, the Netherlands. Their cars are taxed, road taxed on their weight, meaning that if you want a big pickup truck, you will bleed for it, for instance. And then there's our tax reductions if you have, let's say, have a farm, you actually need one. But there's a lot of people that just drive pickup trucks without actually needing one.
Yes, let's hear.
Increased road tax would really do some good.
Let's hear from Don Gayton. I know he was suggesting something similar, penalties for people with big cars or heavier taxes. Go ahead, Don.
Yeah, I think there's room for incentives as well as disincentives, and one of the disincentives I would like to see, and I don't know if this would be within provincial control, but put an excise tax or a higher premium on large horsepower vehicles, like what you said. And, you know, I live right close to Highway 97, and I watch the commuters going from Penticton to Kelowna. A large percentage of those vehicles are big half tons with one person, driver, and no payload. And it strikes me that would be a huge methodology of reducing emissions, is to disincentivize those big vehicles.
Go ahead, John Chastity.
Okay, and one other thing is that I think that we always talk about recycling and changing things. I think one thing that we can change is our supposed need to travel so far and so often that we can reduce the amount of distances that we're traveling over a year. That video that you had us take a look at with the average of about 20,000 kilometers a year, how many people can actually reduce to 15 or 10 or replace some of those kilometers with bikes and things. So I think we have to reduce as well as change.
I think we're going to see electric bikes take over at least a portion of transportation, the portion people used to, drive to where they'd get on the cycle path. Now people will be riding all the way from their home. Anyone else want to make a comment on electric vehicles before we move on? Randy, go ahead.
Hi, thanks, Margaret. I just want to, I guess, reiterate what John just said. One of the silver linings of COVID is that I think we've all found we don't have to travel and drive as much as we used to, and we actually can cut down on the vehicle use. The second point I want to make, and I guess it relates more to what Don was saying previously, is that before we can, I think, and the time is coming where we're going to have good alternatives, like for instance, for half-ton trucks coming in the next couple of years. It's hard to, I think it's going to be challenging to tax big trucks if you don't have an alternative for people and families and people that need those trucks. But I think in the next 2 years, you're gonna see more cost efficient and affordable vehicles like trucks and smaller EVs.
And there's lots of great comments and a link. Cameron Bond just posted a link in the chat. And by the way, you can save the chat at the end of the meeting and look at all the links and things separately. But I think it's time to move on. We've got a few more things to talk about. We had video about light rail technology in the Okanagan. I'm going to bring Sue back to introduce our last topics of conversation.
Yeah, a few people brought up ideas of, I think someone mentioned Lori mentioned car sharing, and John mentioned reducing our use, but there are a number of other ways that we can reduce our carbon emissions. So some of the examples we had, carpooling, car sharing, bikes, e-bikes, the Hydrail, e-ferries, anti-idling bylaws, and any other ideas. What we wanted to discuss is, are there any opportunities that we can encourage some of these different measures locally? So pretty big topic, but I think we'll just have a general discussion. And again, if people just would like to put up their hands, if they have comments.
Well, since I don't see any hands, I'll start off with the question to you all. There are some cities and some larger cities, some in Alberta, where the town has enacted anti-idling bylaws and have actually restricted drive-ins such as Tim Hortons. So that's one method to reduce emissions. Do you think anything like that would fly in Penticton, or would there be rioting in the streets?
I would love it. I mean, that's one thing. I still have people in Summerland, at the IGA parking lot. So often do I walk there, and there's cars that are even empty with an engine running. So I think they should just fine people, simple, fine them. I wouldn't have any trouble with it.
There is a BC bylaw, or a statute of anti-idling. So there is one. It's just for the city to formalize it and activate it, and then have the bylaw officers come by, because there is a BC anti-idling bylaw. I have another poll to see how people travel. Does anybody want to do another poll?
Sure.
While people are doing that, today an MP from North Vancouver was talking to Mark Garneau on Facebook, which will probably still be there. I think his name is Andrew Wheeler or something. And he asked, a lot of people were asking about whether there was going to be a subsidy for e-bikes. And he kind of passed it over and wasn't very supportive of it, Mr. Garneau. But it would have been nice, or it would be nice to get more traction federally and provincially for more subsidy to get people off. Because we saw with COVID how many people got on bikes and got e-bikes and started to change their habits.
The town of Nelson does have a program where you can purchase an e-bike and do retrofitting of your home and put it on your electricity bill. So they are a town that owns their utility, as does Penticton. So there are creative options to encourage e-bikes, and it's being done in BC.
Right, that meeting that Laurie was talking about was Wheeler from Sea to Sky, and it was a little rough. I saw that actually. The transportation planning is really very piecemeal, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Jim.
Just with regards to different modes of using our vehicles, in Naramata, my partner Christy Lind and Fred Ritchie started a group called, well, it's not, they didn't call it anything. The truck is called Fred, and it's shared by 15 families. And for $150 a year, you can have the use of the truck anytime that it's not being used. It's been in place now for, I think, about 7 years. Christy could correct me on that. But the truck is maintained by the people as they use it. For example, a few weeks ago, I took it in to get the windshield wipers fixed. But I've used the truck myself probably 10 times in the last year. And Christy's used it a number of times. It's a fantastic way of sharing a vehicle. I don't know why we can't do more of that. I think ICBC gives no opposition to it at all. They're very well aware that one person has the truck in their name and it's insured, and all these other folks are able to use it. So I think that's something that we could do more of in the Okanagan, especially here in Naramata.
Go ahead, Mike.
Okay.
Just a question about the truck, Jim. Do you list all 50 drivers on your insurance plan?
I had the same question. Yeah.
No, it's not.
How do you get away with it? If somebody has an accident and they're not listed, ICBC is not going to be happy.
It's not 50, but go ahead, Christy.
Every person's name is listed, and we are only 15. Yeah, but you're all listed. You're all liable.
Right. Yeah. You have to.
I think Merle wanted to make a comment. Go ahead, Merle.
Yes, a comment on the last poll that Laurie set up. I noticed that nobody takes the bus, and in various areas, I know this is proven. The way they get people to use buses is have free bus rides for a year, and that builds a clientele. And I ride the bus. Well, I couldn't answer Laurie's poll because I walk and cycle in warm weather, and then I walk and use the bus in cold weather. And I also had a friend of mine say, well, we don't use the bus. We're not that kind of person. And it is true. it is considered a very low class form of transportation. I don't think we really sell the use of our buses in Penticton with any degree of energy.
Yeah.
One thing that, oh, go ahead, Joanne.
That is correct, Merle. I would say city staff are well aware that it's being kind of handled off the corner of people's desks, and that's something that we're seeking to change. So what I'm hearing are great suggestions for the transportation master plan. And Randy, I think that we're developing a new climate action plan, or we're updating it too. So this is really, really great actionable ideas that the community can embrace. So good stuff.
What did people think about the light rail using hydrogen technology video that you saw?
That was very exciting.
Well, you know that there's of course also trouble attached to hydrogen. It's very expensive to produce. But I think it's a great idea, but to me, the main objective should be just to get a rail line, whatever it, renewable rail line rather than hydrogen or electricity or whatever.
Any other comments from people about their...
I was going to say, Margaret, I thought it was really interesting when Dr. Lovegrove sort of compared the cost of the light rail to highway widening. Like I've heard recently other people say, like highway widening is climate science denial, so, and then when you see people talking about real costs of what road infrastructure costs, I mean, sure, a rail line is expensive, but like buying more land and widening a highway and then parking all these cars is really, really expensive too. So I thought it was really interesting when he started talking about the money, and he had a slide there that compared highway widening versus the rail line. I thought that was really, really informative.
Thanks, Matt. Don, did you have a comment?
I think light rail is a great idea. And like Jim Beattie said, we have this incredible geographical advantage that we have a whole bunch of cities that are lined up in a straight line. But light rail is never going to happen until mass transit catches on, and it really hasn't in this valley yet. And so I think what we need to do is take that loser cruiser, negative image of mass transit and turn it on its head and make it, if you're riding mass transit, you're cool. You're part of the new wave of the pioneers and the new generation. And BC Transit has got lots of other things to do, but I think they've really lacked in sort of promoting the notion, particularly with these new routes of, look, it's available. You can commute from Penticton to Kelowna and spend your time reading a book or texting instead of sitting in front of, doing all that obnoxious driving. And we just haven't really stepped up and done the PR that we need to get these new routes. I would say, take a sidewalk poll in Penticton or Kelowna. Probably half the people don't even know that there is mass transit available, intercity mass transit now.
I think Kent wanted to make a comment. Go ahead, Kent.
Well, I guess I wasn't expecting him to have that many questions, but I just wanted to know people's opinion of if they think that driverless cars will happen in their lifetime.
Definitely. We're not all that old, really.
The answer is yes, if Google has anything to say about it.
One of the things that I meant to ask Chelsea is there's a very good transportation plan for the central Okanagan. And she presented the South Okanagan Transit Plan. There is a lot of traffic going every day to Kelowna. And I don't think, I think we could work harder on lessening some of that traffic and making transit a viable option. Right now, it's once a day, twice on Mondays. No one can be a commuter and work with that schedule. Hopefully that might improve. I think we have Cameron and then Lori that want to talk. Go ahead, Cameron.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, I don't think light rail is the answer, especially light rail envisioned in that concept. Just for me, road construction, a railway's trapped to where it's going to go. It's can't move around it. In the global south, and there's a couple of communities in Colombia, in South America, and they use articulated buses. And hydrogen could work on a bus just as easily as a light rail and move as many people, but it could move around road construction, or if there's someone's parked there, if there's some other issue with the light rail system. So I'm not opposed to rail at all. I think heavy rail, it's a shame that Kelowna lost their heavy rail. That's a lot of carbon emissions that are being caused because now they have to rely on trucking for the whole Okanagan now. So I think when we look at this, it doesn't have to be a rail, but articulated buses would probably be a better approach. Get to more communities, allow for more flexibility of routes. So I think hydrogen as a fuel, though, could be looked at. And we had the speaker from transit speaking to that already. So I think there's some strong motivation to electric and hydrogen. But I'm just very concerned about focusing in on rail as the only answer, because there's a lot of problems, especially with light rail systems that are reliant on roadways or other systems like that.
One of the things I was going to mention that I did ask Chelsea if she would speak to the increasing the routes up to Kelowna to make it more appealing to people, because right now it's not really very user friendly. And she did say that there were plans and they were hoping to get another bus going up in the fall, but of course COVID changed everything. And so the plans to increase the routes going up, or the numbers of buses going up to Kelowna, will be later. But I think that that's something that we need to actually let them know that we really want to have it. And, you know, even if it's one of the smaller buses, the one like the one that goes to Naramata is a small bus. Isn't that right, Jim? That's that small van type thing.
Yeah, it is, yes.
Even if that was going up a couple of times more a day, then you'd start to probably build up ridership. We don't have to have a megabus going up if there isn't that many people, but it would be great to start moving people as groups to reduce single car usage. We need to let them know that we want that.
Thanks, Lori. And we need to we need to go to Kelowna ourselves, get out of our cars. I plan to do that. When COVID is over, okay, I think we're getting towards the end of the evening. I hope everyone's had a chance to, did anyone else want to add one more point?
Yeah, well, briefly, we haven't discussed at all, you know, the benefit of a rail system versus a bus. You know, when I drive, for instance, from Naramata to Penticton with the bus, it's fast. When I take a bus from Summerland to Kelowna, I'm caught in traffic jams. And again, I'm referring to my own home country. You know, there's light rails, trams everywhere, and they are independent of traffic. So it's a lot faster to go in a light rail train, for instance, than to sit on the road in a bus.
If you,
more people.
I encourage people to look at the transportation master plan that they've developed for the central Okanagan. They actually considered ferries and light rail as well. And they looked around the world, and there's usually a minimum population that you have before light rail becomes feasible.
I know.
And, you know, we haven't reached that threshold yet.
But sometimes you have to lose money for the good of everybody.
Right.
Margaret, I noticed that Ray Krasinski had her hand up earlier.
Oh, pardon me, Ray. Please go ahead.
That's okay. I don't want to divert from the conversation away from light rail necessarily, but I just thought I would add in sort of, you know, like a multiple person household or a family perspective. Like we've got 3 kids, my husband and I, and you know, it's not really super viable for us to invest in EV vehicles right now. Like I drive an 8-person Honda Pilot, which is actually really gas efficient and fuel efficient. And we are really active on bikes, and I actually run most of the time around town when I'm on my own. But I do have 3 kids that all go to 3 different schools. So it's difficult for me, you know, a vehicle that would suit our needs, an EV vehicle would be a very, very large upfront investment for us that isn't currently viable right now, and also would sort of take it would take for granted sort of the utility of the current vehicle that we have and that we already invested in. So we're really excited about and sort of focusing on bike transit. Like, that's our mantra. My husband is really involved with PACA and the local biking organization, and we're just super excited that City Council has passed the bike lanes, because that is really where, when the weather is warm and viable, I can take my 3 kids in our chariot. My son's 11, he can ride his own bike. We can get from lake to lake, like we can travel the city on bikes. And so, yeah, like, it's sort of not necessarily busing due to scheduling, you know, accessibility right now for us, but just like focusing on bikes and feet. So yeah, I just wanted to sort of offer that perspective is a little bit different.
I think that's a great perspective to end on. That would be fantastic to have a safe biking route that is, as it's called, all ages and abilities, so that your children could go even on their own, and you'd have the confidence that they would be on a safe route the whole way. So I think I am going to sort of end discussion now.